Oh, I caught you doing something there. Oh,
no, texting.
I'm gonna. Okay, let's do that. I'm just vocalizing how different it is for me running a session now with people, with the feeling that I got that people are looking at me, as opposed to usually when I sort of just, jolly my way in and just throw it open to whoever's running the session. Apart from my acting classes, which are very specific and very detailed and focused and very much one-to-one. And the reason I'm saying this is because I have confidence in myself that it's all going to be fine, and that that I recognize that there is an expectation in a way, and especially some people have even paid. So there's even more of an expectation. There's an expectation that I have to do something or give something, add some value. And what I've learned over the years, hi Maria, what I've learned over the years with coaching is that it's not my job to add value. It's my job to introduce something, and it's your job to receive what value you want. And there's no way that I can know, now I've got 15 others apart from me, there's no way I can know what any of you want, let alone all of you want. So all I can do is be myself, introduce some topics, create an environment, a learning environment, and leave it up to you to take from it what you will. And the reason I can do that, I think, is because years ago, I got out of my own way. So the title of this is, what is it? It's Get Out of Your Own Way and Live the Life and Career You Want. My feeling really is that there is no division between life and career that you want. There's no difference between life and relationship and career and friendships and all sorts of things. I think it's all part of the same bundle. And that if you are a solid person with a solid foundation, as unencumbered as possible, as unobstructed as possible, then whatever it is you want, you do to the best of your ability, maybe, the best of your commitment, maybe, but definitely to the best of your humor, not as in funny, but your being, who you are, your fulfillment. And I'm going to drift around a lot with this hour, but it's going to come back, it's going to come to a place at the end, probably, possibly. And what I want to do is to run it down. I'm not planned how it's going to go. And the reason that one of the reasons I've not planned how it's going to go is because I want to model what it is that I'm talking about. And I want you to get engaged in it. So what I want is, as well, is you're invited to unmute yourselves and to ask a question at any time as we go. And if I'm in a flow, I might sort of not answer the question there and then, but I'll definitely come back to it. But what I really want is, I want this to be as free-flowing and as interactive as possible. So I'm going to give you a little story, which again, I haven't planned on telling this story, and it's being recorded, and it's probably not the best story to tell in some ways. But I had a seminal moment when which really painted the picture for me about what I'm talking about. I used to be in business a long time ago. I got a business degree, an honors degree in business and I worked for this big company called Olivetti, which the older people here might know. It was a big Italian office equipment company, and this was a long time ago. And I worked with them for 7 years and worked my way up to being a divisional manager. So I was responsible for a lot of people and all the rest of it. And at the age of 28, I think I got the job. And at the end of 29 years old, I decided to leave and go traveling. Bought a backpack. I wasn't going to learn enough that I could see. So I thought, I'm going to throw it all away, and out of chaos comes order. Ended up traveling, ended up in Tokyo, became an actor and a stand-up comedian and directing plays in Tokyo, teaching drama, having never been in a plays, so totally bullshitted my way into it. But before I got to Tokyo, I was in Thailand, and I discovered that I had curly hair for the first time in my life. I didn't realize I had curly hair because it'd never been longer than a corporate buzz cut. I had a beard. I didn't really, I'd never had a beard before. I had a red beard. Who would have guessed I had red hair? It was amazing. So I ended up in Thailand, and I met these two Canadian girls, and they said to me, be yourself, man, be yourself. And the next day, this is the part that I should really pause the recording for, I had a magic mushroom omelette. And having had that magic mushroom omelette, I spent some time looking in the mirror, saying, be yourself. What does that mean? And I had like a beard and curly longish hair. Be yourself. And I went on this journey. And what I remember is coming back with the conclusion that I can only be, I can't be what you want me to be. I can't contort myself to be what I think you want me to be. And as a salesman, I was a very good salesman, and I had different people in the room, and I would be able to, to speak to everybody to a very large degree. And it was very difficult when two people wanted two different things, had different approaches, to be able to finesse that. But this be yourself, be yourself. And one of, I think it's Oscar Wilde or Noel Coward's thing is be yourself because everybody else is taken. I kind of like that one. But be yourself. I see, okay, I can. So what happened was, as a result of this, is that I ended up just saying, okay, enough, some people won't like me. And in the past, I used to try and make people like me. And because of this day, I'm just going to see, some people will like me and some people won't. And people won't like me straight away, and they might like me later. And then it became not really important whether they liked me, as long as I liked me. So this is a long-winded, I guess, way of coming into the conversation about getting out of your own way. And the way I can explain it is, again, you think of those, and I've written about this, for those of you who read my book, I use this description. I use some of the things, most of the things I say are in there, so I will repeat myself. I said I will repeat myself. That's a joke. But you think that there's this long, those really long freeways, highways in America and Australia that just go miles and miles, and there's nothing either side. And maybe in the distance, there's these big mountain ranges. And life, in a way, is like that. You can, if everything is clear, you can see your way ahead. You can see where you're going. You know why you're going there. And you're just on your way, and it's hunky-dory. But what happens is, a lot of the time, is on that highway, there's a lot of debris. There's rocks and boulders and Coke cans and all sorts of stuff there. And you have to maneuver past them and stop and go back and slow down. And it becomes really quite difficult. So the aim of getting out of your own way, for me, is to clear away all that debris, so that you can continue to take that journey to wherever it is you've decided to go. So, I've done a lot of life coaching now for a number of years, and I've got qualifications in it and all that. So it might be useful to explain slightly what life coaching is, how I see life coaching. So for me, life coaching is a focused, specific, detailed, positive exploration into the life of those who want clarity and fulfillment in their lives. So basically, it's working out what you want out of life, how you're going to get there as quickly as possible. And what you do is you kind of focus on the positives and you leave the negatives behind you. And as actors, it becomes a little more complicated than, not complicated, but it becomes more detailed than that, in that you will be asked to play people who are not totally positive. We don't want to see a drama with two people getting on really well with each other all the time, whose lives are great. We want to see a drama of people who fight and argue and who've got, deep issues. So my belief, this life coaching approach to acting approach thing, is that I believe that if your road, your personal road becomes clear, you can then take on the roles of other people, whether they are comedically just nice or they're tragically nasty, and everybody else, in between and on the spectrum. So I believe that if you get out of your own way, then you can take on the roles of other people. So originally when I wrote the book, it was in 2 parts, and I was told by the publishers to make it into 4 parts. They hadn't even read it, but they said it's 2 parts isn't enough. You've got to make it into 4. So I changed all the Post-it notes on my wall and da, da, da. But originally it was 2 parts. The first part was called Moving Away from Yourself, and the second part was Moving Towards Someone Else. So I think that if you know who you are, you can then clearly work out, if I get a piece of paper here and I'm playing somebody, and I can put a line down the middle of the page and say, and look at the similarities between, so this person is aggressive. Well, I'm not really aggressive. And then you put down the list of characteristics on that side and the list of yours on that side and theirs on that side. And you see which ones are not there that you need to work on. Okay, this guy's aggressive, so how I can now work on being aggressive. But the clarity of knowing who you are allows you to have this very clear, clean, relaxed way of approaching it. So how can one get a nice simple way of working out who they are? So for me, my starting point in lots of my coaching sessions, or most of them, probably 80% of the people I've ever coached, is working on values. Now, before I became a coach, I didn't really know what values were. I'd heard the words mentioned, but I didn't really understand what values were. And the more I work with values, and the more I've worked on my own values, the more I get it, and the more I understand how they can help me. So let me go into what values are. What makes you tick? They are the foundation stones of who you are. When your values are resonating and really being honored, everything is hunky-dory. You can break through walls, metaphorically. You full up. When they're not being honored, when your values are not being honored, it becomes what is called dissonant. It becomes uncomfortable. It's like when you're some of you now might be feeling slightly uncomfortable, especially with this lockdown, because your values might be things like a community spirit. Like for me, relationship and community is a big value of mine. And if I didn't have this medium that we have now and this facility to be able to come into a community, I might be, and I look at my 9-year-old son, he's, all day long, he's a 9-year-old boy who needs to be crazy. He sits there with us, he talks about, poo and stuff that I'm not really interested anymore, and like his little world of and he's talking like this the whole time, which is fun for a while, but after I'm not a 9-year-old boy anymore. So his value of community, or whatever you would call it in his terms, is not being honored. So what's happening is he's feeling I think he's slightly depressed in a way, even though he's not. You might not see it, but I feel that he's got something there because he's not able to be himself. So I've got so values are fundamental to who we are, and very often we are given our values by our parents. Like my dad always used to say to me about being honest. Honesty is the most important thing, and honesty is exceptionally important to me, but it's not my top value. It was his top value, but it's not my top value. And I spent years living a life that other people told me I should live. Teachers, employers, family, and that's fair enough, that's acceptable. You've got to, I have to educate people, my kids. I have to say, these are what your values, these are good values. But that doesn't mean that at your ages, you can't come up with your own values. and that you should come up with your own values, because you are not your parents, your teachers, etc. You are a sum of everything that has gone on before you. You're a sum of your friends. You know, I'm so different than my brother and my sister because I'm the youngest for a start, and I had different. My parents had already knew how to deal with kids, maybe, but also my friends who I used to hang around with. My family is so not money oriented at all, but a lot of my friends were. So I have part of me has this little capitalist, materialist thing slightly, that none of my rest of my family have got. They would be completely opposed to that, whereas I'm open to it. So your values change, and values are things like, I'll go through mine. I've dug out an old, when I was doing some being coached, the dates here, 2012 and 2014. The values that I had in 2012 were integrity was my number one. And for me, integrity is a combination of all of your other values. My second one was passion and dynamism. Then I had personal development, fun, connection, variety and newness, freedom, being inspiring or being inspired, self-confidence, hard work, and peace. And then that changed. Once I understood myself a little more, it changed. And then I got equality and fairness, which I would now call justice. So when I'm watching, you might all feel that, or some of you might feel this. When I watch a TV program, or we have the George Floyd thing at the moment, I know that some people have this tremendous sense of injustice. They really feel this Black Lives Matter movement that's been happening a long time, but they really feel it now because they have this sense of justice or injustice. So one of my strong values is justice. I watch a program and they get me immediately, because I can feel that it's going down that thing. You see the bosses all sitting there going, "Oh no, let's," it's like there was a Blackadder scene near the end of the final one where Lord Haig is sending, like, they send all the people over the trenches to get shot and killed, while they're all sitting drinking port and whatever. That kind of thing really hits me. But for some people, it wouldn't make any difference, and for those people, it certainly wouldn't make any difference. I was liberated about 4 years ago. I wrote variety on that list, but I don't really think I understood what it was. But, for years and years and years, I've been doing loads of stuff in the entertainment industry. And I was did radio, short stories, commercials, film, TV, plays, handing out leaflets on the street. My CV is 15 pages long from those days, and loads of extra work, 15 pages, because I did everything. But once I started doing coaching, and I was helping other people identify what their goals were, and let's get it clear. And what a goal will do is won't just something to move towards. It's like a black hole that sucks you in. You can't not get sucked in by this goal. I thought to myself, oh no, I've just had a coach when I was starting out. I'd have been somebody, I'd have been a contender. I'd have been on TV all the time or whatever. But I realized through looking at values that one of my values is variety, and how it is essential for me to have variety in my life. And when if I was just doing one thing now, and I didn't have variety in my life, I would really start feeling dissonant. I'd be frustrated. So I know that as one of my values is variety, I can do something to make my 4 out of 10 at the moment value of variety 5 out of 10. Okay, so values are the foundation stone. That's the first way of you understanding who you are. Because once you've gone through that list, and those of you, again, this is in my book, and there's a blank values table, which looks like this. There's a blank values table in the book that you can copy and write down your own stuff in. But it's what your top 10 values are, the meaning to me, currently honoring, the scale of 1 to 10. And then most importantly, in a way, not most importantly, because knowing what they are is important, but how do you increase your score? So for example, if I say, creativity is one of your values and you're feeling frustrated and you're doing 6 out of 10, I'd say, what's one thing you can do to increase your 6 to a 7. And you'd say, well, go and do an art class or even just go to the theatre, I don't know. But it would be something. And what happens then is you start, as I said before, blowing up your balloon. You start to become more complete. I'm just looking at the shirt I've got on. You know, I'm made up of a series of little squares, sections, and each one of those sections gets filled in. It creates a whole person. Whereas if it's sort of, I'm going to stretch my metaphor my analogy very strongly here, but if it's just white on one side, I'm not balanced. So what happens is once you identify your, say, for example, 10 values, and you increase the scores on each of those, then you become this person. All of a sudden, you become confident. And I get asked a lot, when people come to me in the coaching realm, very often they come to me and they'll say, I want more confidence. I want to get more confidence. And then the conversation goes, well, what do you mean by confidence? And then we go deeper and deeper and deeper. And the upshot of it is that nobody can give you confidence. You can't buy confidence. You can get confidence for a very short period of time. But overall self-confidence, like the sort of thing that in a way I'm displaying here, comes from a series of small successes, in my view, and large ones as well. So examples I use are things like, tying your own shoelaces up when you're drunk. That's a major success sometimes. And that gives you a certain, especially if you're drunk, a certain drunken confidence. You go, I can do anything now. Yeah. So even little things, and that's why, again, in my coaching, I get people to reward themselves. I would just ask any of you, and in a way it's a rhetorical question, not rhetorical, but the other one. I would ask any of you, when was the last time you rewarded yourself for something that you did? Now, when I was starting out in New York as an actor, every time I booked a job, I would go and have sushi at this place around the corner on Avenue A Sushi. I would go around and have sushi every time I booked a job. Every time I got paid for the job, I would go and have sushi at that place. And what happened over a period of time was I was able to mark my successes. Because what generally happens is life becomes very general. And unless we can see the milestones along the way and pass those milestones, it's like if you're driving to Edinburgh and, you just think there's this long road ahead of you. But once you get past, Luton, that's okay, great. I know I've gone somewhere and I know I have somewhere to go. You get past Birmingham, the same. Liverpool or Manchester, whatever, the same. And it just becomes a journey. Now, life is a journey is quite a cliche. And again, one of the phrases I like to use, which I stole from somebody and I can't remember who, I think it was definitely one of my clients, was people talk about life as a journey, a marathon, not a sprint. And I think that it's a marathon in the Tuscan countryside, not a marathon in Haringey on a wet Wednesday afternoon. It is a marathon, but it's an enjoyable marathon, or it should be an enjoyable marathon. I always have this thing about when I was a kid, I remember people thinking, I want to be a millionaire. And I always used to think, are they going to be happier when they've got the million than they were when they had 999,999? The reality is possibly for a moment, but the reality is probably not for longer than a moment, because they got the same issues, good and bad, that they had before the million than they have. And then it becomes about, the million. It doesn't become about what you're going to do. It doesn't become about anything else. So I'm going to jump around a little bit here. So we talked, actually, no, I'll come back because we talk about values. So what I want to do is, the first thing is that values, it's important to know who you are. So to get out of your own way, you've got to kind of know what your way is and who you are. So does anyone have any questions on the values at the moment? Doesn't matter if you don't. Just put your hand up if you do, and or you can unmute yourself. Okay, so that's the first thing, is knowing who you are. Now, we often, everybody, and I stopped because my brother disagreed with me on this, but I believe that everybody has in us saboteurs. And the job of the saboteur, I'm going to quieten you, Tanya, because I think you just sneezed or something. That was lovely. Thank you for that. It's quite all right. That was Tanya Cheney, everyone, who's making that noise. So the job of the saboteur, mine is Tanya. Now, the job of the saboteur is to keep everything the same. It's to stop you from moving forward. It's to maintain the status quo. And the saboteur says things like, I don't really need to read it, but I've got it written in here. Saboteur words and phrases. It's not realistic. I'll never be able to do that. I'm not good enough. There are thousands of people up for the role. I'll never get it. I'm comfortable with the saboteur voice as it's a boot up the arse. I'm not good at network. I'm not good at marketing. I'm not good at creativity. I'm not enough. I haven't got enough. I'll never have enough. I don't deserve it. Stuff like that. The saboteur's job is to keep us in the same place. The saboteur is also called gremlin. Let me just see if I can find the book. This is Destroying Mystery. This is Wizard of Oz stuff, Behind the Green Curtain. So I've got this book, which I wouldn't recommend that anyone buys, because you don't need to buy it, but it's called Taming Your Gremlin. So saboteurs can also be called gremlins. And as I say, the job of the saboteur is to keep you in the same place and stop you from moving forward. I had my saboteur when I was writing the book was Droopy, because Droopy's like, you know, the cartoon character. So I'll explain in a second how you can remove a saboteur, or how you can deal with a saboteur. But I printed out a picture of Droopy and put him next to my computer. And every time I was like, I looked, no. So the way to deal with a saboteur is you cannot kill one. Because one day they'll raise their little ugly head and you'll say, I thought you were dead. I thought I'd killed you. I failed. You can't kill one, but you can deal with them. But the first step is to know that you've got one, and that we all have a version of one. Some people have multiple ones. One of my clients had the Hydra was their saboteur, because they had multiple heads saying multiple things. You know, all the you're not good enough kind of stuff, but lots of other things. And I'm sure if I asked you all as homework to write down a list of the things your saboteur says, you would be able, you would start noticing them and hearing them. So it's identifying you've got one is the first thing. The second thing is to give it some sort of, I would say personification, but it doesn't have to be a person. It can be, I had one client who her saboteur was dust. Dust was the name of it, because it was this cloud that enveloped her. I'll come back to a bit more to explain a bit more about that in just a second, because I want to give you the third stage of dealing with a saboteur is to, you just ignore them. You know, we have this expression, no, just ignore him and he'll go away. You know, it's actually quite valid when it comes to saboteurs. You have a choice. You can either listen to them or not. And the way to not listen to something is to listen to something else. And I'll just digress in a little story about neuroplasticity. The way the brain works is that the way to stop doing something is to start doing something else. So the image that I use is that you are in a forest. You know, if you've been thinking this negative thought forever, and that might have been given to you by your parents or by anybody else, by teachers too. Oh, you're stupid, you're never going to get anywhere, you know, you shouldn't do that because of whatever the reason is. All these kinds of things, and I get this a lot. I mean, lots of people have this. And I'm sure all of you have got somebody in your life who said things that have really landed and pulled you back from moving forward. So so the way of dealing with a saboteur is to deal with it, to ignore it. So let me give you some examples. One of my clients is a West End musical star whose name you would probably know. And I haven't worked with her for about 4 or 5 years now. But when we first started working together, she had just been on a reality TV show, and the judge had slaughtered her and completely demoralized her. So her saboteur was this judge. And what I said to her, what are you going to do with this? What are you going to do with it? Oh, neuroplasticity as well. Let's talk about. So yeah. So what are you going to do with this judge? And a garbage truck went past my living room window at the time. So she said, I'm going to put it in that garbage truck. And the garbage truck drove off, and she felt free. So every time moving forward that she had any of these negative thoughts, she would just think of the garbage truck. I had another one client of mine put it in her bin next, she put it in the bin and put a lid on the bin next to her. Another one, something I'm working with at the moment, has a rocket ship that she just fires. She's got strong saboteurs built on years of negative, being given all these limiting beliefs. She sticks in a rocket and she moves on. Because this neuroplasticity thing is that walking through the jungle, you've got this pathway that that you've walked along so many times, this negative pathway, this thing, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to do this, I'm rubbish at accents, I'm no good as a human being, I'm never going to find a partner, I'm ugly, I'm stupid, whatever that pathway says. It's become so comfortable and easy to walk down that pathway. But the way to deal with that is not to stop going down that pathway, but it's to decide to move down a different pathway. And bit by bit, over time, that pathway becomes the way to go. The other pathway is still there, but it becomes grown over. And it's much easier to walk down the positive one because it's much clearer and you can see it than it is down the grown over, nastier one. And you might find yourself sneaking over there one day, but then, because you've got a better place to go that's much more suitable for you, you go over to the other one. There's another book I've got, which I won't get out just to prove I've got it, is Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. And it's a really interesting book, really interesting. And he has got this theory that he proves in it with Bill Gates, the Beatles, loads of other things, hockey teams, that it takes 10,000 hours to become really good at something. So you deciding today that you're going to walk down a different pathway doesn't mean that it's all going to be hunky-dory by the end of the week. It means that it's the first, it's Confucian, he said that on a 25,000 kilometer walk, the most difficult step is the first. And I kind of believe that. I do believe that. I think it can be very much the case that the most difficult step is to decide to move down a different pathway. And especially if the saboteur feels so comfortable. It's been with you for so long. It's like having a sort of you think it's a symbiotic leech type thing, in Star Trek, the original ones, where this thing sticks to you. And if you take it off, it's going to take all your lifeblood out of you. Well, no, it doesn't. But it feels so comfortable. We've got these such comfortable saboteurs that we've grown up with in a way, and we it's good for me, it just keeps me grounded. Well, yeah, grounded's good, but if it stops you from expressing who you want to be, really want to be, then it's not good. So this neuroplasticity thing is about a choice. You've got a choice, always have a choice really, of what you do and what you don't do, always within reason, but you choose to change it. You choose to get out of your own way. And clearly, the fact that you've taken an hour out of your life to listen to my monologue means that you've already taken a first step, unless you really have nothing to do, which actually a couple of you probably don't, but anyway, you've made that choice. So dealing with the saboteur, does anyone need any more explanation on a saboteur? Anyone want to talk about it a bit more? No. Within this saboteur realm.
Sorry, Daniel, can I ask a question?
Yes, Tanya.
You said at the beginning that someone disagreed with you and said there was no saboteur.
Yeah, my brother.
What was, just out of interest, what was his...
You wouldn't ask that if you'd met my brother. No, I would answer that, but he's the wrong person for me to be explaining. You know, he's an undiagnosed guy who's on the spectrum, and his way of looking at, he gets so down into the detail of something that I probably should have said that, but well, no, fuck it, that's what I think. So yes, so yeah, it's a good question, but it's not for this. It's not for this.
Sorry, Daniel, I think.
Yes, go on, Kat.
I think Elizabeth's asked the question in the chat. I'm not sure if you saw it.
I didn't see it. I'm on a roll. Although I totally agree that we can be our own saboteurs at times, what techniques have you used to help you deal with situations that were beyond your control? For example, other people's actions, or a situation that's beyond your control. Sorry for poor grammar, not feeling 100% today. Spelled correctly. Can't see a problem with grammar. Well, the thing is, you can't deal with somebody else's expectations of you, and it comes from what I said at the beginning. All you can deal with is the way that you react to somebody else's behavior. Something I used to use, I developed for myself a long time ago that my daughter now uses a lot. If you say to her, if somebody says to her, "You're stupid," she'll go, "Thank you, I'll take that as a compliment." And I used to say all the time, I got a lot of abuse when I was a kid, and I just got to think, okay, I'll take that as a compliment. And it just completely took the negative energy out of it. So all that I could control was my way of dealing with something, my way of seeing something, of hearing something. And this thing about getting out of your own way and being yourself, man, is that's all you've got any control over. Really, ultimately, if I want my wife to like me more, I change my behavior. I don't expect her to change her behavior. If I want to make sure things are better at home, I will insist that we communicate better by saying, okay, when you say this, it makes me feel that. It reminds me of when my dad shouted at me, and then I wanted to do this. If you want me to do this, then keep on doing what you're doing. So I would explain how it affected me, in a way, or what the results are going to be, rather than say, you've got to change. I'm not sure whether that answers the question totally, but it's enough. There's enough of an answer in there that I'm satisfied that will carry on. But if Elizabeth, if you've got a follow up with that, yeah, type it in, and Kat, if you would mind administering it for me. So we talked about saboteur. Now, other parts of a saboteur are, which one should do? Limiting beliefs we've kind of covered in a way. These are things like, and I'm not funny enough, and nothing's gonna, I'm not big enough, I'm not good enough. This is part of the same thing. A way of dealing with limiting beliefs is very often asking for evidence. So you say, well, I'm not really very good at accents. Well, where's the evidence of that? You've tried for about 5 minutes to do a Scottish accent, and it doesn't sound that good. That's not really evidence to me. Evidence is if you spend a year working every day for 20 minutes on a Scottish accent, and at the end, somebody says to you, is that Welsh? Well, maybe you're not that great at a Scottish accent, but I'm sure after a year of working at it, and you do it properly, as in you look at how Scottish people move their jaws when they're speaking, and where the sound, where we did this deforest resonance class this morning, where the sound comes from, if you've done all that, and then but I don't believe that people who say they're no good at accents have really tried it properly. So limiting beliefs are exactly what it says on the tin. They're limiting. And I always have this thing about, why would anyone want to be limiting? Some people, I've been in factories where I've seen people moving chocolate from one thing to the other all day and every day. They were very happy with that. I worked in this thing when I was a kid, this direct mail place where you just ticked off things. You got paid a penny for every line you checked off against the postal register, whatever it's called. You just penny for it. And these women just did it all because it was only women. These women did that all day long, and they were really satisfied. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about people who want to grow, who personal development might be one of their values. who growth is really important with them, where variety is important, with change is important, with achievement, with achieving that, doing that part to the best of your ability and then moving on to the next one and doing that to the best of your ability. So I'm not talking about people who do the same thing every day. So when I say limiting beliefs, I'm talking about you lot really who are still with me, who want to not be limited. So limiting beliefs are similar with the saboteur. Now, connected to all of this is an imposter syndrome, possibly. Now, who has not heard of the imposter syndrome? So everybody's heard of the imposter syndrome. Now, the imposter syndrome, it came from in the 1970 something or other. These two people did this research for very, very successful women. They interviewed them and they found out that more than 70% of these successful women thought that they were imposters. They were frauds. They were going to get found out. They were only successful because of luck, because they're in the right place at the right time, because nobody had noticed that they weren't actually very good. All of these different reasons. And again, there's a list in the book that you can go through. I had imposter syndrome, and I remember clearly the time that when it was pointed out to me, and I was like, oh, it's a syndrome. Other people have got it. It's not just me. So I started, and so what happened with this research was then they broadened it out to men as well. And they found out the vast majority of men had it as well. And I know I had it. That's the reason I was running so fast when I was in the corporate world, why I was trying so hard to get promoted all the time, because I thought if I stayed in the same place, they would find out that I wasn't actually very good. I was in fear of getting found out that I'd been promoted in above my head. And I'm not saying that people don't get promoted above their head, because you go to any council building in the world and you'll see that people get promoted above their ability. So the imposter syndrome, so again, it's one of those things, knowing that you potentially got it is a way of helping yourself remove it. Now, I'll go here to get some of the quotes. Now, these are some quotes from people you may respect on the imposter syndrome. Meryl Streep said, "I don't know how to act anyway, so why am I doing this?" Kate Winslet, "Sometimes I wake up in the morning before going off to a shoot and I think I can't do this. I'm a fraud. They're going to fire me. All these things. I'm fat. I'm ugly." Michelle Pfeiffer said, "I still think people will find out that I'm really not very talented. I'm really not very good. It's all been a big sham." Don Cheadle said, "All I can see is everything I'm doing wrong that is a sham and a fraud." Emma Watson, "Any moment someone's going to find out that I'm a total fraud." And it goes on. There's lots of them. Quite interesting, when I was doing the research, I did a Google search on actors with imposter syndrome, and there's loads of them. And you can understand why there would be, because we're sensitive. We put these things, we put ourselves out there. We're up there to be, to be judged. And we walk into a room and we know people are looking at us. And and it's really easy if we haven't worked on the thickness of our skin, or not even the thickness of our skin, but the thickness of our mentality. It's really easy to get affected by these scenarios. So the imposter syndrome, has anybody got the imposter syndrome? What's really interesting, loads of, even Elizabeth's little yellow thumb up. What's really interesting is I've just explained it to you and explained how ridiculous it is. And everybody, I have. Everybody, 3/4 of you put your hands up, and I got it. It's interesting. It's interesting. Who wants to have it? Nobody. Not even a little yellow thumbs up from Elizabeth. Nobody wants to have imposter syndrome. But you've all got it, and all. So I would just invite you to not. I'd invite you to just hear it and just ignore it. And maybe shut it the fuck up, possibly. Put it in a box, leave it by the side of the road, stick it in a rocket, put it in the shower. All of these things are things that clients of mine have used over the years, and it works for them. And what you'll find is after a period of time is that they will just disappear.
Would you say it's the same as self-doubt though?
Yeah,
Because
self-doubt,
if I was like an Oscar winner and I had imposter syndrome, then you'd have reason to think that I've gotten all of this success, but I'm an imposter. Whereas for me, I'm on a certain point in my journey, and I don't have so many, I guess, massive, obvious achievements that will make me that I feel like I can call it imposter syndrome, but more sometimes there's self-doubt. Is it exactly the same thing?
Self-doubt and imposter syndrome, it doesn't matter whether it's the same thing. What matters is that it's not healthy. It's like, again, the word critic. A critic is somebody who tells you something's not very good. That's the dictionary definition. And people say, oh, I've got this inner critic. It's really good for me. It gives me a boot up the arse. Really? I think that maybe there's another way of looking at it. Try something else where it's not somebody who thinks you're not very good is giving you a boot up the arse. Why not have a look at something that will say, okay, great, this is where I want to get to. These are the stages of how to get there. I'm going to do one step at a time. I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that. And you start to, things start to work for you. I'll give you an example. And it's around perfectionism. Who here is a perfectionist? Lots of hands coming up. In fact, everybody's hand up, and then there's one who's not, and one who's waving. And I can't see Ed because his camera's off and he hasn't worked out how to use the yellow thumbs up thing. But so a perfectionist, I would venture I would ask you the question, all of you perfectionists, to name one thing in the universe that is perfect. And to save time, I will venture to say that you will say nothing. So what you're doing by calling yourselves a perfectionist is trying to achieve something that is impossible to achieve. And what happens for perfectionists is one of two things. One of them is, a snail shell is perfect. Okay, thank you. You would find something. One of the things that for perfectionism is you don't start the journey. You don't start doing what it is because you're never going to be perfect with it. So why bother starting it? And the other is you don't enjoy the journey because you're trying so hard to get to the summit that you don't enjoy the trip up towards the summit. So the analogy is, so what I would recommend that you do is, if you want to get to the top of a mountain and you're looking at the top of the mountain, you think it's so far up there, I'm never going to get there. Then what you could do as an alternative is to say, right, to get up to the top of the mountain, I need to go and buy some boots. So you go to the shop, you buy some boots, you buy a map, you get all those pitons, and I was going to say croutons, but you get the pitons, you get a hammer, you get an ice pick, you get all of these things. You go buying things and you really enjoy that day. You say, that was a great shopping show, I really enjoyed that. Even for me who doesn't like shopping, I would still at the end of that day would feel satisfied that I have got that short-term goal of having got all the equipment I need to climb the mountain. Then you get a Sherpa or a coach, maybe, the equivalent of a Sherpa in this analogy. So you get the Sherpa, and then you go to, first day you go to base camp, and you think, what a great day that was. I've got to base camp. You put your tent up, you look back, you think, great. Next day, so forth. But then you get to the part where you get to this big ice ravine, and it's like 5 meters away to the other side, but it takes you all day to go across and back again, and you're kind of 5 meters on. But that day was a tremendous sense of achievement. And you picked your tent and you looked and you think, what a great day. And you keep doing that all the way up to the top, and then you get to the top, and it's like that millionaire moment. If you just want to get to the top, you've got this moment of, I'm here, I've reached it, great. And I'm here by myself, I've got nothing. It's what now? Or you think, that was amazing, and you look down at the route you took to come up, and it's great. And you think about that and how the sense of achievement to get to the top of that mountain, and you're standing there and you think, you know what, there's a mountain over there that I'm going to climb next. How am I going to get there? well, first of all, I need to get down from here. So how do I do that? You start looking and you start enjoying the journey. And perfectionism prevents you from being able to do that. So again, I'm going to invite you all to stop saying you're a perfectionist, because first of all, it doesn't serve you. And secondly, you're never going to get perfection. So why start off on a journey that's going to be unenjoyable, and you're never going to reach the destination, possibly. Yeah, Kat's saying I deliberately do imperfect things to unblock me sometimes, but that's not what I'm talking about. Doing imperfect, yeah. I mean, imperfect and perfect. Imperfect. I'm implying that perfect doesn't. Sue's saying I stopped being a perfectionist and it's very liberating. I'm suggesting that there is no such thing as perfect, so everything's imperfect. It's doing something. So where should I go with this now? So let's just, so we've got values about who you are, identifying who you are, and we've got things about that are getting in your way. So getting out of your own way is removing these obstacles on the road, getting rid of the debris, the Coke cans, the rocks, the stones, the whatever it is, getting rid of those. And those, what that debris is. And if you don't, then see a coach. Just so happens in lockdown I'm much cheaper than I was before lockdown. There are people out there. You can get people to do coaching for free, I'm sure. Not me, but you can get people. That you get help. And by saying get help, I don't mean get help because you're crazy. I mean get help because everybody needs help. Everybody needs help. I'm going to go out for a walk with my wife and 2 kids after this. That's me getting help. That's going to stop me from getting sucked into the Facebook group and work and stuff. So everybody needs help, and it doesn't mean help doesn't have to be a dirty word if you don't want it to be. So I'm aware of time, and I'm just thinking that I'd like to open it up a little bit. I'm also conscious of it's getting out of your own way, living the life and career you want. It's important to identify what that career is, what life you do want, and what career you do want. And again, with my coaching sessions, very, very often it'll be, we'll drill down, the conversation will drill down to, I'll say to, what do you want to do? So I want to do theatre, and I want to do TV, and I want to do, and I say, well, there are different casting directors, cast all of those different things, they're different people. So you've got hundreds of so what the conversation ends up happening is it goes towards a point which is much more easily manageable, which is I want to play detectives on TV. And then there's a certain amount of casting directors who cast Line of Duty, Prime Suspect, or whatever these TV detective programs are, Law and Order. There's a limited amount of casting directors, and you target them. So knowing what you want to do is also, I want to be on Line of Duty. It's very common. People who worked with me will hear me say, so they'll say, I want to be on Line of Duty. I said, well, what do you know about the internal affairs for the Metropolitan Police? They say, nothing. Well, there's a job for you to do. There's your first step, is to learn about internal affairs for Line of Duty. From the Metropolitan Police. Look at the structure of the Metropolitan Police. Learn how to shoot a gun. Learn how to drive a car fast. All these things are all things that you can do, so that when you get the opportunity, when you say to your agent, whether your agent is good or bad, you say that I know how to shoot a gun now. They'll say, oh, okay, there's this casting to, they need somebody, who looks confident. I worked with an actress once who was, up for this big action thing, and she had this little plastic gun, and she looked, and I said, no, you don't hold a gun like that. She was like sort of doing what she'd seen on the TV, but she didn't know how to do it, and she was not convincing. So I'm sure as soon as she got in the door, there were people who were convincing. She was out already. So it's about being convincing things. So you learn about internal affairs in the police. You walk into an audition and you say, well, it's really great. I mean, what don't I know about this? And you're already there, and they want you to be this person. So they don't want to teach you how to do it. So you're already you're more than halfway there. So it's about, once you're clear about what you want, in terms of the roles you want to play, the career you want, which are two separate things. Once you're clear about what it is you want, it's easier to get there. If you have this nebulous, I kind of just want to act thing, well, okay, so you can do, you know, if you want to do local theatre, does that cover it? And usually people say no. Well, it's not that you just want to act then. And then the conversation will go deeper about what it actually is that you want. And if it is, I just want to act, and yes, our local theatre is good, well, do local theatre, take the pressure off. You don't need an agent for that. You can even set one up yourself, etc. Okay, so I'm aware of time, so I'm going to open up to anybody. Does that answer the question about getting out, or is it a way to answer the question about getting out of your own way? Is anybody not yet clear on what I mean by that? Okay, so I'm going to open it up to, and I think I can unmute all. I can give you the permission to unmute, and if anyone wants to switch their cameras on, who's not, they can do as well. If anyone has a question they'd like to ask, there's Kat's mum again. Is it always her sister?
It's my sister. She's just
always,
got some new fish.
She's always Zoom.
There's always somebody around.
Her family is good, you know. They all every time there's one of her family members in the background. So who's got a question? Ian, feel free. Yes, Mary.
Yeah, I was just wondering how you, if you have a really bad experience in a job, or you know, how can you set that to one side? Do you see it as part of your journey, learning?
Yeah, I do. I have some horrible experiences of castings that I've been to where they have been horrible. Lots of them not my fault, some of them my fault, but mostly not my fault, because it's never my fault. No, but so I could tell you those stories now, and I would still have the same passion telling that story that I had at the time. But do I want to focus on that? No, I don't. Do I want to look over here and focus on something else instead? Yes, I do. So you have enough things, Mary, in your life that you could focus on, that actually make you smile, that give you a sense of worth, sense of something. And you know, if you were my client and we were alone, I was asking you to, you know, I would ask you to go away and to write out a list of 50 things that you're good at. You know, if this is what the conversation ended up being about. And you'd go away and you'd look at that list, and you'd look at that list before you went into a casting. You'd say, well, 50 reasons why I'm right for this job, as opposed to 2 reasons why I'm not right for this job, which are I suck and they don't really want me, they want somebody else. You know, people want you to get the job, they want you to be good. And people say that all the time, and whether you really, you know, it's about owning that, really believing that they do actually want me to be good. That takes away some of the pressure. It doesn't take away all of the pressure. It can do. Any other questions? Hitesh, and then Erin.
Daniel, I really enjoyed what you talked about in terms of you know, your values and, you know, being true to yourself. And the question I had was, you know, of course, we all want to be true to ourselves, but is it also, I mean, is it also okay to say no to certain things, even though you know it may help you?
You watched David Ajala and Mido Hamada's talk. They said no to a lot of things. Mido said no to Steven Spielberg, even though his story is different, you know, the true story is a little bit different than the way I said it. But his agent said no. He said no, he did not want to pay terrorists. He refused to play terrorists, so he said no. So, yeah. I don't know whether that answers the question. Saying no is empowering. You know.
Yeah, the only reason I asked it because, you know, I've recently said no to something recently, and a certain industry professional gave me a lot of grief about it, but I did it for good reasons.
So there you go. That person's not living your life, Hitesh. You know, that person's living their life. They're looking at it from their perspective. You know, the difference between an agent and a manager is that an agent sometimes, not all agents, but lots of agents they need you to get that job today because they want the money today to pay their bills. A manager looks at your career and thinks about, well, we'll say no to this job because this one's going to be better.
Yeah.
And some agents, good agents, do that as well. Bad agents don't care what you think. And I've got lots of examples from clients of mine. I've got an agent who's very well known. I used to work with this actress. When I first met her, she was very young and very slim, very beautiful, and she was up for doctors, and we did lots of work together. And then fast forward 5 years, she put on a load of weight. So her agent used to fat shame her by sending her to castings with overweight women. She's a big reputable agent, this woman, but she's a nasty piece of work. And I know I've worked with another client who's afraid of talking. This woman's a married woman with kids and an adult and all the rest of it, and she's still afraid of talking to her, or was until we worked together, afraid of talking to her. There are people who have their own agendas, Hitesh. Your integrity and whatever reason it was you said no, if that was a really good reason, then go with it.
Thanks.
All right. Erin.
Yeah, so if there's this is kind of my situation at the moment, and I'm trying to figure out how to manage my mind a little bit. There's this audition that I'm doing, I've got to do 3 self-tapes for it. And it's a role that I really, 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 really want. It's so in alignment with my values, and it's got all my skills in it, like music and playing the bass. I'm kind of obsessing over it, and how do you kind of stop that? And I'm always thinking, what if someone else gets it? When you really want something, just how to.
Okay, well, we're talking about, there's the, what's his name? I'll read it out. Bryan Cranston. It's the last paragraph in the book of the first chapter called Getting Out of Your Own. The best advice for fellow actors is this: know what your job is. An actor is supposed to create a compelling and interesting character that serves the text. You present it in the environment where the audition happens, and then you walk away, and that's it. Everything else is out of your control, so don't even think of that. Don't focus on that. You're not going there to get a job. You go there to present what you do. You act, and there's power in that. There's confidence in that. We can talk after this, and I can help you with that. And I can help you work on the audition. I worked with an actress this morning, 10 o'clock this morning. She's got for a big role. It was the same thing. What we didn't talk about was the audition. We did talk about the audition, but we talked about getting, ready for the audition. What we did talk about was what the character's thinking of. If you're obsessed with it, watch everything that she would watch. Listen to the music that she would listen to. Read the literature that she would read, etc. And just every time you hear your saboteur saying, "Oh, you've got to get it," just say, "Fucking shut up."
Thank you.
All right. And that's an example of it, because that shows how simple on the surface it is. And Elizabeth, I just saw there say, put all your energy in the character. And the character is the overall character. And enjoy it, she's saying as well. And that's absolutely right. Sue, I'll take Sue as the last question.
Yeah, so a couple of things, more statements and questions. But one is that I used to do this stuff myself, coaching. So I used to coach people when I worked in the corporate world. And it is absolutely so important, and all the things Daniel was talking about, it's a good reminder and don't just think because that's what it used to be, it will be the same for you now. So it's always good to revisit. So I've just written my values down, and they're completely different to when I was working in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And I thought, God, I haven't done that for years. And the other thing which I think is really, really important, you were talking about when you've done something and it wasn't great, and you kind of, and that's happened to me a couple of times, and I've started to narrow down more what my casting type is and what I want to do. And I think don't underestimate the importance of knowing what it is you're going for, because if you're going for the wrong things, they're not going to feel right, you're not going to get them. So some people will be more generic than others, but I've got a very specific type, and whenever I do those jobs or that thing, I feel fantastic, and I know I've done well, and I try other things and it just doesn't quite go right. So
thank you, Sue. Thank you. I was going to ask a question. Yeah, okay. So I think we're over time a bit, and I'm a bit of a stickler of time usually. Most of what I've said is in that. I think all of you, maybe apart from Drew, has bought it. Maybe so far. No guilt trip, Drew. There you go. Look, Hitesh has got it to hand. It's all in there, and if you want, if you go to the Bloomsbury site, they've got good discounts, or I can send you a signed copy if you pay for the postage, if you'd like. But anyway, so I think we've got to wrap this up, even though we could keep talking. How do I finish this? Because I like finishing things. Okay, what's one thing? I'm going to zip round very quickly. What's one thing you're taking from today? Colleen, because I'm going to do it all run. Or somebody else.
The value thing. I think I have not. As soon as you raised it, I wasn't actually even sure what my values are. So I'm like, this is something I'm definitely going to think about. And
okay.
Yeah. So
okay. I'll pitch for some business. I'm over. I don't have much time, but I can help you with that if you want to pay for it. Tony, what's one thing you're taking from today?
I'm taking the fact that my Auntie Mary was my saboteur, and I still hear her voice. Long time dead,
Right.
but she's still there. Now I've got to the stage as Auntie Mary, that's very kind of you, but I don't want to listen anymore.
Thank you very much. Good. Maria? Yeah, one thing to take away.
Oh, yeah, I think then I didn't know that being perfectionist can pull you back actually from your goals. Yeah.
Okay, good. Kat?
We have sessions together, and it's just made me realise actually I haven't thought for a while about what I want, that one thing I want, and it changes, and to focus more on that next time.
Very good. Suzanne?
Yeah.
I think similar to Colleen, having a think about values. I think that's a good starting point.
Good. Mary, you got your thing. You can take your mute off while you do that. Sue?
I think possibly I might be aiming towards BBC Three comedy.
Okay, good. Drew? I can't hear you, Drew. You're not plugged in, so I'm going to go to Hitesh. Type it in, Drew.
Being true to myself and realizing that there are, in fact, bad agents out there.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There are. Janet? You're muted. You're muted. You have to unmute yourself. So I'm going to go to Erin in the meantime.
Putting the gremlin in the bin and just being aware of it and being like a witness to it.
Okay, good. Janet?
Well, I think I would have said ignore the saboteur, but I think I'm getting better at that anyway. So I would say probably try to be a bit clear about the goals or where I'm going.
Very good. Drew, are you? Can I hear you?
Yeah, imposter syndrome now. Yeah.
Okay, good. Do some research on it. Look it up.
Yeah, thank you.
Vinny?
Oh, more focus on values, less listening to gremlins.
Good. Mary?
Similarly, less listening to my saboteur, sending it up in a balloon.
Tanya, talking to balloons.
Oh, yeah.
I've known Tanya a long time, by the way. Sorry, I should explain that. I've been rude to her for probably 18 years.
Don't try and scale the mountain all in one go. Do the little bits that take you up it. Although, can I just say something very quickly?
Yes.
I have a habit of buying the boots, getting all the gear and doing all that, and then going, done everything now, and then not doing the last thing, putting the ball in the back of the net kind of thing, and that's what really fucks me off.
Yeah, so we can talk about that as well. Is anyone in the chat? Ed, I'm not sure Ed is there. But he's muted. He's already at work or something. Or
yeah, no, I'm here. I can hear me.
I can't see you though.
Oh yeah, no, sorry. I've been sort of working on half doing this at the same time. Hang on. But I like the Gremlin book.
Okay.
Yeah, hi. No, I like the idea about getting rid of the gremlin, and I quite like the look of that book as well, especially the illustration on the front. Who was that by?
With my book, or the no, that one's called Taming Your Gremlin.
That's what I like. Yeah,
it's very simple. I mean, you pretty much said it already. It's Rick Carson.
Rick Carson.
Yeah. It's really, he could have written it in 2 pages, to be honest.
Oh, I see. Yeah, but also I think what Tanya was saying earlier on as well, just a minute ago, about getting all the stuff. But that first step is the hard one, isn't it? That's the biggest leap.
It's Confucius. Yeah, it's not just you. It's Confucius.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Is that everybody? I think I've asked everybody. Yeah. So I'm going to do this now, I think. Hold on. Yeah, so you can go on to, but before I press the end of recording, I suppose I should say go to www.danieldresner.com for further information on coaching services. But you all know me in any case by now. So, yeah. And Ed and Drew are going to buy the book. And that's it. All right, hold on.